Okay. Thank you everyone for coming on in to our study group today. We'll get into things in just a minute here, but I'm really excited to be able to offer this. This is an open group today because we are celebrating Social Work Month. So thank you for coming. How many of you is this your first time ever coming to a study group with me? I'm sure a lot of you. Well, welcome. We're very happy to have you here. We hope that you'll find this helpful and you'll learn some. If anything, I just hope you take away some more tools for your toolbox to utilize on test day. So welcome. We have over 300 people. That is just amazing. This is definitely our biggest one ever, which I love to see us all coming together to connect in Social Work Month. So for me and my team at Agents of Change, March is our busiest month because we have been for about 6 weeks prepping content. A lot of fun things. We've been doing contests and giveaways and doing lots and lots of stuff to be able to celebrate you all. So thank you. So in the chat, you will see, I'm going to do it a couple times throughout. So you will see we have a free course that we are launching for Social Work Month called Basic Business Skills and Extra Income for Social Workers. And that is because the theme of this year's Social Work Month is about empowerment. And it's about empowering social workers to get fair wages, to get more wages, because we know that we are grossly underpaid. So if you will find that helpful, it's free. It's a pretty extensive course that my husband recorded. He did finance for a long time. He helps us out at Agents of Change immensely. And he does all of the business stuff behind the scenes and has helped me with the business stuff a lot. So I'm going to put that again in the chat. Check it out. Share it with whoever you want. It is completely free. So that's kind of another thing that we put out there this month as well. So what are we going to do today? We are going to go over some basic test taking strategies, the 5 W's. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, we will go over that in just a minute. And then we will see how much time we have, because I do want to respect your time on the weekend. And we will try to get through 5 practice questions, and we'll break those down and go through rationales as well. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Megan Mitchell. I am the founder of Agents of Change, and I just am blown away by how big our group has grown. We started about right in the pandemic. So I guess it was 4 years ago now. Time is flying, but I'm really excited to see how we have grown throughout the years. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. So everything will be done via the chat, just because there's so many of you all. If we took people off of mute, it would be probably a lot of noise and it'd be distracting. So if you have anything that you need to say within the chat, definitely put it there. And if I miss it, you can always email me after at agentsofchangeprep@gmail.com, and someone from our team will be able to answer any questions you might have. I will try my best, but as I'm going to, it might be hard for me to read the chat at the same time. So we will go ahead and get started, and we will send out this recordings the same way that you got the link for today. We'll send out the recording and this PowerPoint after as well. So you'll have access to this. This is what I think sets Agents of Change apart from anything that I saw out there when I was taking the exam nearly a decade ago. We are here to support all learning styles. There is no one style fits all, and that is why I think it's so important, and we encourage this so much. Find what works for you. You might be an audio learner, you might be a visual learner. The groups are very good for in-time learners, right? You want to learn and see how you're doing in real time. So there really is something for everyone. And that's why we even do so many study groups on what's your learning profile? What does your workspace look like where you're going to learn best? So I really do focus a lot on leaning into whatever works for you is going to work for you, and lean into that. So today, if you want to follow along, take notes. If you're going to watch the recording later, this is your time. You know how you learn best, so lean into that. Okay. So before we get started, in the chat, how many of you are taking, so today it's just gonna be strategies. How many of you are taking the master's level? It's gonna be master's, it's gonna be all levels today. Okay. So the master's level is definitely more generalist, right? You're gonna be asked a broad range of really everything. And then how many of you are taking the clinical level exam? So we're gonna have a really nice mix. Clinical is going to be a lot more of those reasoning questions. We'll get into that in just a moment here. But the clinical and masters, people are always like, what's the difference? The content is pretty much the same because the content's the content, right? That doesn't change as you test for the clinical. What changes is what you're going to see on the exam, right? You're going to see more diagnostic. You're going to see more ethical dilemmas. But the content is the content from the bachelor's all the way up to the clinical. What you also will see in the clinical level is you're expected to practice at the highest level, right? So independently. So in a lot of questions, you would be expected to be the supervisor at the clinical level. So those are, people are always like, the content's the same. Yes, it is the same because Erickson is still Erickson, right? The theories and whatnot are the same. It's just how they present it on the exam. You'll see different styles of questions. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump in. This is going to be our test strategies and 5 Ws, and this is going to be setting the groundwork. How many of you have heard of the 5 Ws? Maybe you are part of the course or you've seen a YouTube video. It's really, really, really helpful. If you've never heard of it, we're going to go through it, so you don't have to worry about it. I think it's like the easiest thing you can pop into your toolbox because it's who, what, where, when, and why. And it's going to help you if you get stuck on some of those questions, pulling out the important information. So we will talk about that in detail here. Okay. So happy Social Work Month. If you are wanting to purchase anything from us the whole entire month, we will have $10 off. Use SW 2024. And this is anything. This is practice exams. It's the package, and that will last through the 31st. If you know someone else that could benefit from that, definitely send them our way as well. We only do this $10 off for the whole month in Social Work Month. So that's a little bit about that. Here is the code SW 2024. If you want to take a picture of it or share with people, it will be active all month. So right there for you. And we now are on TikTok. I fought this for a long time. I was very anti-TikTok. Now we'll see what happens if TikTok even stays around with what's going on. But we are on TikTok because some people like the really short, bite-sized things. So we're Agents of Change Test Prep. And once you get this, there'll be a link that you can follow us as well. But we are on TikTok and we have little videos there that go over study tips. Nothing too scholarly on there, but some good like brain tricks and just knowing different things that could be helpful if you are a TikTok person. So there's that. And let's go ahead and jump in. So very, very high level basics. Any level of the test, bachelor's, master's, clinical, you will have 170 questions and 4 hours to complete it, unless you get an accommodation and you have extra time. But the standard is 4 hours. The standard is 4 hours to take the 170 question exam. Only 150 questions are scored. So your passing score will need to be, it's a range. There's like several different versions, but it's graded out of 150 questions. 20 are test questions. You will never know which 20 count and which 20 don't count. That's the hard part, right? So just FYI, you can get a lot of questions wrong, right? And you can still pass. So that's what I tell people, like, don't get super tripped up on 1 or 2 questions. You can get a very big handful of questions incorrect and still be in that passing range. There's 3 types of questions. There's recall. These are very few and far between, but you basically have to recall some sort of fact or theory or definition, and that's that. There's not really any deep thinking, right? Either you know it or you don't. Application questions for those taking the master's most of what you're going to see are application questions. This takes the knowledge a step further. Not only do you need to recall the information, but you have to apply it to case scenarios or real life situations. So these are not, so a lot of times people will say, but I read the whole AppGuard book front to back and I didn't pass. That means you had really good recall knowledge, but you might have struggled applying the knowledge, right? So the knowledge is helpful, but if you can't take it to the next level of being able to apply it, it's going to be a little bit trickier. And then the third type of question is reasoning. These are the hardest because not only do you have to recall, not only do you have to apply, you have to weigh which information is the most important. You have to synthesize the information and you have to problem solve. So you're using tons of brain power on these reasoning questions. So let's see here. I'm trying to see any questions. People are saying, what's the score you need to pass? It's generally a range, but the range is generally 98 to 103 questions out of the 150 scored. You will see agents of change practice tests are only out of 150 questions because we're not going to even account for those 20 unscored. So what you see on the agents of change is your score out of 150 because that's what you'd be scored on. So that's why we don't do 170 because of that. So I'm trying to think, are there other questions people asked that I could answer? Oh, people said you get your test printout right away when you test. That has changed. Yes, it used to be at the old provider. You'd have to get up, go, and a proctor would give it to you. It's now immediately, which was since they changed it over to the new testing site PSI in 2024. So you should get that. Okay. Yes, the highest I have seen needed to be correct is 103. But that's all on the ASWB website. Check that out. Don't get too caught up on that. Okay, so 3 types of questions: recall, application, reasoning. I want to just preface this by saying I study adult learning. I myself have ADHD, so I understand challenges in studying and whatnot. This test is a reading comprehension test. If you struggle with reading comprehension or even focus for 4 hours, that's going to be a skill that's going to need to be developed. Adult learners also learn very differently than we did when we were younger. So 4 hours is very, very difficult to sit for a 4-hour test, right? Yeah. So if you're like, why am I struggling with this so much? Because it's a standardized test. It's not designed with adult learners in mind. And we learn very, very, very differently than we did 20 years ago. I don't know how many of you feel like the older you get, your memory is getting worse and worse and worse because there's more competing stuff up in our head that we need to think of on a daily basis, right? So it makes sense, but doesn't help when we have to sit for a 4-hour exam. So let's talk strategy. If you are sitting for this exam, you have to have some sort of strategy. I would not want you to I've asked people who didn't pass, I said, what was your strategy? And they said, I didn't have one. I said, okay, well, that's where we're going to start. We're going to get you a strategy. And what this means is you need to have a toolbox on test day. When you get stuck on an answer, what are you going to do, right? I don't want you to panic. You can do this. I tell people the best thing that you can do is if you feel confident that by your test day, no matter what you see on that exam, you'll have a tool. Even if you don't know the content at all, you'll have a tool to be able to at least approach it with some reasoning. You're in a good spot. So just, it's tricky. It's really a muscle we got to build up. So here's just my basic information on like basic test taking strategy. This is like 101. Read each question twice before looking at the answer. Why do I want you to look at it twice? Your adrenaline will be higher on test day. It is a test. It's a high stakes thing, right? So on test day, your adrenaline will be faster. You will probably be more prone to rush through things. How many of you get into a high stakes thing and you can even feel your energy's going up because you're like, I'm nervous. I got to do this. That is why a lot of people do better on a practice test than the real thing because it's more high stakes when it's the real thing. So you want to read each question twice because the second time through, you might pick up on some information that you missed the first pass through. So that's why I say read it twice. Read all the answers before choosing an answer. How many of you are like me and you're like, oh, it's A, I got it, moving on to the next one, but maybe you didn't really go super, super closely through with a fine tooth and you maybe missed a detail or something. How many of you are the type of people that you'll get through the test and then you see which ones you got wrong and you're like, oh my gosh, that was such a silly mistake. I should have read a little bit closer, right? So if that's like you, you're gonna want to read 2 times as well. Yeah, jumping the gun is probably the most common thing. I did it all the time. Eliminate answers that are too extreme. There are going to be a mix of 3 answer choices and 4 answer choices. So A, B, and C, and A, B, C, and D. You want to read them all first and eliminate any that you're like, this absolutely is not correct. What do I mean by this? If it says you're in a school and the child has bruises on their leg, and that's it. We don't have any more. They just had bruises on their legs. How many of you have kids and your kids probably have bruises on their legs from just playing and being out and that's very typical. A too extreme answer would be to call CPS. That is jumping the gun. We do not have any information just by seeing some bruising that would be the appropriate answer. So that's why we have to eliminate answers that are too extreme, or we'll see this as we go through some of them. You definitely don't want to jump to conclusions. So if you see something that says you have an elderly patient, don't assume that because they're elderly that maybe they're not able to consent on their own, or they're not right? There are many, many elderly people, even in their 90s, that can make sound judgment themselves. So we don't want to make any assumptions unless the answer gives us that detail. And then if you've been in the field, you're going to want to take clinical hat off. This test is a reading test. It doesn't care about all the wonderful, amazing things we've done in the field, and put on your test taking hat. What do the words on the screen say, and how do I answer best? That's why this is so difficult, because it's reading comprehension and it does not want you to bring in any of your outside clinical knowledge. That's the hardest part. So a little bit, that's kind of my strategy 101 there. Let me make sure I'm doing good on time. Okay. How many of you have seen the social work helping process, or it's sometimes called the generalist model? You need to know these steps. So if you don't know it by test day. And I will quickly go through. I'm not going to be able to go through all of these different things, but this is basically the steps that we as social workers go through with our clients, right? We don't just start and stop in the same fashion, right? What we do in an intake would be much different than what we do in a termination session. So this model kind of helps us know where we are with clients and what we do with clients in each of those stages. So I'm just going to quickly go through these: engagement, assessment, planning, intervention, evaluation, termination. If you're someone that likes little memory tricks, our memory trick is eat pie today. What does that mean? What are you talking about? Eat pie today. Eat is engagement. A, assessment. Pie, planning, intervention, evaluation. Today, termination. So what some people do is they just write EAP, IET, and then from there they know what the different steps are. I will give you the 1-minute rundown of what this is. Engagement is when we first are meeting a client, right? We're going over informed consent. We're building rapport. We are making sure they understand mandated reporting. They understand duty to warn, all that stuff, right? The purpose of engagement is we want them, if you're in a setting where you see them more than one time, we want them to come back, right? We don't want to see them just one time. The purpose of a really good engagement stage is that you will build that rapport so that they will feel comfortable and confident coming back. So that's engagement, rapport building. Assessment. All assessment means is collecting more information. This can look like a lot of things. This can look like a biopsychosocial. This could look like an informal observation. This could look like rating scales. It could be just talking with the client, right? And reading their body language. So assessment is just collecting more information. So we've built the rapport, we've got our presenting problem, we've collected information, then we move into the planning stage. And planning is, what are you going to do with the client? Treatment planning, right? You're making goals here. What are we going to work on? What are our targets? You want to do that with the client as much as possible. So why is in the chat, just why is it important to include the client in the planning stage as much as possible to the best of your ability, right? Why is that important? Why is client feedback important here? What do we think? Why is client feedback important? Self-determination, that word's definitely important. They are the experts, right? We have some clinical knowledge, but we're not the experts on their life. They are in control, buy-in, right? I think someone's going to be much more bought in when they had some say in the process versus being told what to do. We got to think of power differentials. We got to think of a lot of different things that are in play here. Empowerment, autonomy. Absolutely. You guys are all absolutely on the right track here. So we engaged, we assessed, we planned, then we move into intervention. That is doing the work, right? This could be doing CBT or a prescription of whatever you do. It could be DBT, it could be mindfulness, it could be motivational interviewing, like whatever the clinical thing is, that's the intervention. The intervention phase can also start happening like throughout, right? Once you have consent and you have enough information, you can start doing the intervention. How long you're in the intervention phase depends. Depends on your setting, it depends on the client. If you're in a crisis setting, you might have a very short time with the client versus if you're in an outpatient private practice, you might have a lot more time with the client. So, we are intervening, then evaluation is collecting data. We have to collect data to know that what we're doing is working or not working. You don't want to get 6 months into a process and the client's regressing and you never collected any info. And here we are 6 months down the road and we never have checked in about what's going on, right? So evaluation is collecting data. And then termination is a phase. It's not a one-time thing. Termination is signaling that the therapeutic relationship is going to end. That's all termination means, right? Our time together therapeutically is coming to an end. You should prep clients for this. You should tell them ahead of time. Of course, we can't control that always, right? Like sometimes clients terminate because they have to. Sometimes we terminate because life happens. So to the best of our ability, we try to prep them for it, and we don't want to have client abandonment. That is unethical. So quick on that, make sure you know this on test day, because what you do in any of these phases changes what you would do with the client, right? What I'm going to do in the termination session might look very different than what I'm doing if I've met them one time, right? So just important to have in the back of your head. And it gives you a process, right? Say it said you have been meeting with the client for 6 months and you are engaging in CBT. We know we've engaged and we've assessed and planned. We're in the intervention stage. So a little bit on that. Okay. Here are some tips on how, as adult learners, we can make this really stick. When you're doing anything, if you can try to think of the helping process, so engagement, that what we just went through those steps, think of a client you've had before and think of what each step looked like for that client. What did engagement look like? What did assessment look like? Walk through the whole process and use that as an example, because that will help it stick in your brain a little bit more. When we actually can use real life models to help us with the content, it's going to be really helpful. And then having those real life examples and applying it helps the information stick. That's how adult learners learn best. Okay. So now we're going to get into the 5 W's. Who, what, where, when, and why. Think of literally in maybe 3rd to 5th grade where you get a reading passage and they say, who was the main character? What was going on? Where did the story take place? When did the story take place? And why was there a problem, right? This is really going to help you on test day. So the 5 W's will help you because when you're reading questions, you can pull out this information. Who's the client? What's going on? Where are they? When did symptoms begin? And why do they need my help? If you're stuck on a application or reasoning question, use the 5 W's. However, it doesn't work on every question because a recall question doesn't have all of these details. And know that this is one tool that you can have in your toolbox to help you on test day. So we're going to just quickly go through and apply these 5 W's just so you can see. And then after that, we will jump into our 5 practice questions. So you will have some time to utilize these tools. And this is a very short abridged, right? We have 1 hour together. So if I'm going really fast, there's tons more information on our blog, on our YouTube that you can go through at like a much slower, nicer pace. But I want to make sure we at least touch a lot of the basics here today. Okay. So this is going to be our practice question. And we're going to go through the 5 W's. So go ahead and read this. I'll read it out loud too. Let me just move over my box so you can see it. Okay. A social worker is collecting information for family therapy. The family consists of a mother, father, and 2 children ages 14 and 8. The parents report they want the family to spend, quote, quality time together, but whenever they try, everyone ends up fighting. The 14-year-old daughter looks visibly annoyed and states her parents treat her like a baby. The 8-year-old says he wants to play with kids in the neighborhood and go to his friends' houses, but his parents say family time at home is more important. The social worker should focus treatment on. Okay, I'm not even going to show you the answer choices because we're going to break this down. So our first W is who. Who is your client? So here, our client is not an individual. We're doing family therapy. And what do we know about family therapy? Yep, people are already breaking it down in the chat. The client is a family. So there's actually 4 people in this scenario that are our client. The mother, the father, and the 2 children ages 14 and 8. Why is age important here? Why do you think they gave us the ages of the kids? We need to know what's developmentally appropriate at that. 14-year-olds, do 14-year-olds feel like their parents treat them like a baby sometimes? Probably yes. They're probably trying to be more independent. Is it normal for 8-year-olds to want to play with kids in the neighborhood and not spend more time with friends? Yes. So why they give you this information is to show developmentally what's going on. So that's really important information to take as we are pulling out our who. Mom and dad, though, they just want so much time with their kids, right? But they're not seeing or honoring or validating where the kids are in those developmental stages as well. And what it's causing is some sort of communication breakdown. So that's our who. The family, we'll call them family X. Family X is our client. Okay, the next W is what. So what is the presenting problem? What is the question asking? And what does the social worker need to do? So what would you say the problem is here? We have it highlighted in bold. Parents are unhappy about this quality time. They're not getting the quality time. We're fighting. We're not getting along. And kids are like, I don't want to do this. I want to do other things. So there's some sort of communication breakdown or boundaries or role confusion, or there's some sort of misalignment here, right? Parents want one thing, kids want something else. They're all fighting. They're all bickering all the time, right? This could be named like any family in America, right? It's probably gone through this at some point. So that's our what. Yeah, not on the same page. Exactly. So what is the question asking? The question is asking what the treatment focus should be. So what does treatment focus mean? Remember, it just says we're collecting information for family therapy. So probably means we're in that engagement and assessment phase. And what are we going to do with this information that we have? Okay. And what do we need to do? We need to plan for something. That's what this question's asking us to do. Where? What setting am I in and what setting am I in and where is the client? You will not always have all of the W's. Do we have any information here of what setting we're in? Does it tell us you're in a hospital? Does it tell us you're in a school? We don't know. We don't know if this is, community mental health. We have no idea. So sometimes you don't have the information and that's okay. That's not necessary. So, yeah. So we don't know the where. We don't know if it's virtual. We don't know if it's in the office, but there will be some questions where they do give you the where. Okay. When is duration? So when did you meet this client? When did symptoms occur? When did the presenting problem start? So we don't have much going on here to work with, but if it says we're collecting information for family therapy, where do you think we are in that helping process? I would think probably intake, initial meeting. We're assessing here. We're getting information, collecting information. And some people say, well, can it be engagement and assessment? Yes, engagement's like really step one, but even in your first appointment, you're doing both, right? You're engaging and assessing. Because every single thing that you're doing, even communicating with them, is assessment. It's giving us data, it's giving us information. And that's, like I said, formal or informal. So we are in the early stages of working with this client. Okay, why? This is where we got to put our thinking hats on and we have to figure out what's all this information for. Why do you think they need our help? Why do you think they are reaching out? Family breakdown, right? They want things to be different, to go differently. And why are these clues in the question stem given? Why do you think they told us age? Why do you think they gave us a family thing? Because we got to put them all together to figure out what's going on here. So this is where we're putting our thinking hats on. Okay. So why we're needed is to help with that family communication. And why is this important? Because what we can take from all of this is there's some sort of expectations that are not lining up. We talked about that, misalignment. There's a breakdown in communication and everyone's not on the same page. That's kind of what's going on here. Okay. So now you get your answer choices. So go ahead and read it again. I will give you some time to answer in the chat, and then we'll go over what the correct answer is. But I definitely encourage you to slow it down and just kind of think through this one, because it's not, it takes some critical thinking. So the social worker should focus treatment on A, helping the family establish appropriate roles and boundaries. B, developmental levels and communication strategies for each child. C, facilitating activity-based family interactions to build on the strengths the family presents with. Or D, connecting the family in meaningful ways through role play. What would be, do you think, the correct answer? And then also, if you can, just why did you pick what you did? Why did you pick what you did? And remember, this is what our focus is going to be on. I will say this is one of our harder questions. We always have kind of a split here, and I'll tell you what's going on with it in just a minute. Okay, let's go ahead and start ruling out things. So what would I rule out here? I would immediately rule out B. I'd put a slash through answer choice B, developmental levels and communication strategies for each child. Why is B not the best treatment focus for a family? It only focuses on the children, right? And this is a family unit. So B would not bring in everyone that needs to be brought into. So B is out. Okay, what else would I rule out? I would rule out D, connecting the family in meaningful ways through role play. Do we have any information in this question stem that says that role play is going to be the best way right now for them to move forward? Right, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Getting ahead of ourselves with role play. This might be some people, I don't know how many of you have tried role play, and some clients are like, great, I'll do role play, and others are like, absolutely not. This is, I work with kids and teens, they're like, this is so stupid, right? It's not going to work for everyone. We don't know if that's appropriate yet. So D is out. We're between A and C. What is more important and why? C is actually going to be eliminated because facilitating activity-based family interactions to build on the strengths the family presents with. Once again, do we know activity-based things are going to be best for them yet? Do we know that that's a strength of theirs? Not yet, right? They might not even be at a stage where they can do any activities together yet. We don't know that yet. So that would be an assumption that this activity-based interaction is going to be the best. Process of elimination, our best thing we can focus treatment on is helping the family establish appropriate roles and boundaries. Why do you think, given everything we've just talked about, A is the best thing to focus treatment on? We're working with the family and there's a breakdown now. So establishing what everyone's role in the family is, what boundaries are appropriate and not appropriate, will help us set the groundwork to do whatever it is we choose to do. Maybe that is role play, maybe that is activity based, maybe it's just having weekly meetings where they discuss this, but we have to do that first before we can plan to do anything else. We're meeting the clients where they're at. We know this is a problem, so that's why we're starting there for our focus. Any questions on that one? It's a tricky one. Okay. This is just kind of the end of the slide, so we're going to jump into practice questions now. But does anyone have any questions about the content that we just covered, some of the strategies? If this is like brand new to you, it does take some time to get acclimated to, so don't worry. The more you do it, those of you that have been working with the 5 Ws, how many of you can do it very quickly in your head now because you've practiced it a lot? So you don't even have to break down who, what, where, when, and why. You kind of naturally do it. Yeah, absolutely. I am sharing my screen, so if you can't see it or if you can't hear me, exit out and come back in. Sometimes, you know, technology does not play nice with us. Okay, so now let's jump into our practice questions. And there is no prize for getting these correctly. This is just practice. This is just practice. Remember, you want to have tools in your toolbox. So let's use some of these things, right? Let's try to, if we get stuck, utilize the 5 Ws or think about, that social work helping process, where am I with the client? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our practice questions. We have 5. Let's see. Most are going to be 4 answer choices. I got 1 3 answer choice for you because you will see that on the exam. For these, don't just put the answer. What's also important is that you explain why you answered what you did, or if you're stuck between 2, put like A and D, I don't know, because that helps me see where people are getting hung up on. So there's no prize for this. It's just practice. The more you practice questions, the better. I will also say a lot of times people will email us and say, I found this random practice question, but it didn't give any rationale. You will always see at the end of all of the practice questions I give, there's rationales. If you don't know why you got an answer right or wrong, it's not a good practice question. So if you find something floating around on the internet and there's no rationale, it's not a good practice question. So just FYI. So let's go ahead and read number 1. A couple enters couples therapy because they're experiencing conflict in their relationship. The husband blames the wife for all of their problems, while the wife feels helpless and demoralized. What would be the most appropriate intervention for the social worker? A, connect the husband and wife with individual services in conjunction with couples therapy. B, help the client identify and communicate their feelings and needs. Or C, assess for potential emotional abuse that is leading to the relationship conflict. What are you choosing and why? Remember, use that who, what, where, when, and why. And remember, here, they're coming in for couples therapy. Couples therapy. Give you a few more moments on this one. Why are you choosing what you did and why? Okay, So you'll see my process a little bit here. I do use green to highlight important things. So we know this is couples therapy. That's going to be important. Our client is the couple. That's both of them. They are experiencing conflict. And there's once again a breakdown, very similar to our last one. Husband's blaming wife. Wife feels helpless. There's some sort of dynamic that's not working here. What should the social worker focus on? What would be the most appropriate intervention? Okay. I'm ruling out C, that's too extreme. There's nothing at all here that says that there is emotional abuse, right? Blaming the wife and her feeling demoralized and helpless does not tell us directly that there is potential emotional abuse. That is out. A is also out. Connect the husband and wife with individual services in conjunction with couples therapy. Why is that not the most appropriate intervention at this time? Right? We're there to help them together, right? This is a couples therapy thing. We might see throughout the process that they do need that, but that's not, as the couples therapist, that's not what our intervention focus is going to be on, right? Best answer here is B, help the couple identify and communicate their feelings and needs. That's the best to treat what's going on. They're not communicating their needs very well now, and they're not on the same page once again. So B is the correct answer here. It's couples therapy. That's literally what couples therapy is generally for. How can we better communicate our feelings and our needs? Yeah. Any questions on this? Okay, let's keep moving on. Number 2. A social worker is working with a client who has a history of substance abuse and is currently in recovery. The client tells the social worker that they have been feeling intense cravings for drugs lately. What would be the most appropriate intervention for the social worker? A, help the client resist cravings. B, help the client identify triggers and develop a plan to manage them. C, encourage the client to attend a support group meeting. D, schedule an appointment with a substance abuse counselor for the client. What is the best choice here and why? Some of you are bringing up really good things. Where are they in this stage of change? Absolutely. Think of that helping process. Where is the client, right? We have some sort of relationships established here. Self-determination is important here. Okay. History of substance abuse, but in recovery, that's important, I think. Is starting to have intense cravings lately. What is the most appropriate thing for us to do? Okay, let's go ahead and start eliminating. Would we ever just say, I'm going to schedule you an appointment for you with your substance abuse counselor? Why is that not a great answer? Does that give the client any autonomy? I'll schedule this appointment for you. No, right? That is out. That is not meeting the client where they're at. It's really doing a lot for the client. It's not meeting them and where they need to be. Okay, what else would I? Help the client resist cravings. Why is that not the best answer? Is having cravings usually common when someone's in recovery, right? We'd maybe normalize that for them, but can I stop them from having cravings? No. Like there's nothing that we could do. It's part of yes, it's part of recovery, right? And it doesn't give us any information. It's way too vague. What does that mean? Help them resist the cravings, right? So that is out. So now we're on B and C. C is not a bad option. Encourage the client to attend a support group meeting, but does that answer what they need right now, that they're having these cravings? Could, but it's not the best. It's not the best. So our best answer here is help the client identify triggers and develop a plan to manage them. Why is this better than C? Why is B better than C? Also, I don't know if support groups are the right venue for them, right? I don't know if they do well in support groups. Help them identify their triggers. So you're having these cravings. Let's come up with a plan. It acknowledges where the client is at. It acknowledges that they're in recovery, and that we're gonna make a plan together. Does that make sense? Do you see how this is empowering? It's working with the client and it's addressing the problem here. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Someone made a good point. They said C would be like a supplement to B, but B is really the grounding. You got to think of the foundation. Let's make this plan first. They might need a support group in the future, but that's not where that's not where we're at right now. Okay. Number 3. A social worker is working with a teenager who has been restricting food intake and has lost a significant amount of weight. The teenager reports feeling overweight and out of control. He expresses a desire to lose more weight. What should the social worker do next? A, refer the teenager to a dietitian to assess their nutritional needs. B, develop a plan with the client that meets their nutritional needs while also addressing their concerns and fears around food. Assess the teenager's risk for an eating disorder and provide appropriate intervention, or D, schedule an appointment to collaborate with the client's medical doctor. This is important here. This says, what should you do next? So that means like you've done some things with the client. What's our next step? A lot of red flags here: restricting food intake, losing a lot of weight, and feeling overweight and out of control. What do we do and why? Next. Okay, let's start. This one's a little bit trickier. I don't know, as someone, we could maybe make a plan with them, but I cannot tell a client what nutritional needs they would need if they're restricting food and losing a lot of weight. That is outside of our scope of practice, right? I would say that is not appropriate for me to be determining. That is for a nutritionist and your doctor, and there's a lot going on here. So B would be out. Okay. Refer the teenager to a dietitian to assess their medical needs. Why is that not the next step we would take? Does that give us enough information yet? We haven't assessed enough to know if that's the proper next step yet, right? I'm going to make an assumption that yes, in the future, they're going to need that, but that's not the step yet. So this is where people get really tripped up. Do we schedule an appointment with the doctor first, or do we assess and then from there provide appropriate intervention? Do you think we have enough information here that we would need to assess if there's disordered eating going on? We as social workers can at least start to take information to determine the next steps. Yes, we need to assess here. How severe is this? How underweight are they? Tell me more about what's going on. So C is the correct answer here because we need to collect more information. They are definitely going to need to see a doctor, but what information are we going to give the doctor? We need to get that information, right? We need to assess what's going on. And this is very vague. It says provide appropriate intervention. Appropriate intervention could be calling a multidisciplinary team, right? We need more. I'm going to assess. I'm going to say, wow, you're at risk for this, right? I am going to do like a pretty extensive thing. Tell me more about what's going on. So we want to assess. I always say assess before taking action. All the other ones are taking a lot of action. We need to assess first so that when we do connect with these other providers, we have the proper information here. Does that one make sense? We are going to do these other things, but not without having information to share with other people. Also, scheduling an appointment's a lot different than I could schedule an appointment to meet with them, but what if that's in 3 weeks and they need care more quickly? Does that make sense, right? Like, yes, I can schedule an appointment, but does that guarantee that I'm going to be able to talk with someone, right? I can tell you, anyone that's worked with outside providers, this could be weeks before you are able to get in touch with someone. So we don't know if this is to the level where we could wait that amount of time. We got to assess first. So C is the correct answer with this one. Okay, we got two more. This is more of a macro one. So if you're taking the master's level, you might see some more macro community workplace ones on your exam. So number 4, a social worker is working at an agency where an outdated policy on employee performance evaluation is in place. The social worker believes that the policy is not effective in measuring employee performance and may negatively impact employee morale. What is the most appropriate next step for the social worker to assess the policy? So there's something in place. It's not really working very well. What should the social worker do next? A, develop a new policy on employee performance evaluation and discuss this plan with management. B, conduct a survey of employees to gather feedback on the current policy and identify areas for improvement. C, discuss the policy with coworkers and identify areas of concern to present to management. Or D, request a meeting with management to discuss the policy and suggest improvements. This is a next question, which means you're somewhere, you've already done some things. What's the next step that you take? So what do you think is the appropriate answer here and why? We see there's an outdated policy. We think that it's not effective and may be negatively impacting morale. What do we do? Think of here, you are, and you're at an agency where this is your job to do this, right? It's not like you're whistleblowing or something. What would you do and why? Think of what next. You want to start to order them, and where are we in the process before we do the other things? You might do some of these other things at some point, but where's the starting point? Okay. Do you think we are just gonna say, okay, we're just gonna develop one ourselves? Is that the next step, or do we not have enough information yet? Not enough information yet, right? I'm not gonna. We can't make a new policy if we don't have information to guide the new policy. So A is out. Discuss the policy with coworkers and identify areas of concern to present with management. Not a terrible option, but what about this is not great? Just discussing with coworkers could get without it being formalized, could get really slippery and really tricky very quickly. Why do you think that is? How many of you have maybe tried to have like a little conversation and it quickly turns into like you're off the rails and it's not formalized and now we're just having a vent session, right? Absolutely. It could turn into gossip. So C is not bad. It's just it has to be done in the right way. So that's why it's different than B. Someone asked, why is C different than B? B is more formal. It's going to give you actual data. So request a meeting with management to discuss the policy and suggest improvements. Also could do that, but would it be more beneficial to first get some sort of data from a survey to be able to share with management, right? You need some sort of evidence. So B is going to be the correct answer here. Conduct a survey to gather feedback and identify areas. It's kind of like conducting a needs assessment, right? Because I'm not really going to go into my management if I don't know exactly what is changing. I need to collect information, right? Why would a survey be a better route to go about doing this? It's going to give me tangible things, right? And we might have an assumption that this is really bad on morale, but what does that mean? If I have a survey and it says, wow, I'm feeling really burnt out, or I'm feeling that I'm not recognized, that's going to really guide us in what we do. So get a baseline, get an information, and then you can say, hey, management, look, this is what is going on. So that one's a little bit tricky, but if you can have tangible data, that's going to be much more helpful in helping you with any step moving forward. What if you just did D? Okay, and you go meet with management and they say, okay, you say morale's bad. What evidence do you have for that? Well, a feeling that I have, right? They're going to want some sort of tangible information. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that one? It's a little bit tricky. So someone said, how does the social worker know the policy is not effective? Assumption. It says here, the social worker believes the policy is not effective. So once again, too, why a survey would be helpful. Thank you for connecting those dots. I'm making an assumption here. Maybe the data might tell me no, I'm making an assumption that's wrong, right? So that's why the survey would be really helpful. So thank you for bringing that up. That's actually a really good point. Okay. Last one. Number 5, you are working with a mother who comes into your weekly session with a black eye and discloses that her partner got upset with her and hit her. So there's some sort of interpersonal violence going on here. She expresses that she needs help and wants out of the relationship. Which of the following would be the most appropriate first step for a social worker to take? A, inform the mother about her options and available resources, such as domestic violence hotlines, emergency shelters, and legal aid services. B, contact the police and report the abuse to ensure the mother's safety. C, help the mother address any systematic barriers that may be impacting her ability to leave the abusive situation. D, help the client to identify members of her support network who can help her if she is in immediate danger. What do we do first? And why? This one's tricky. Yeah, what do we do first? Think of here, self-determination, what is our duty when it is an adult that is experiencing abuse? What do we do? Okay. Let's start ruling stuff out. Do we have duty to warn when there is an adult that is experienced, like, as the person can definitely call themselves, but do we have to report? No. This is unfortunate, but we would not report this. If the client is an adult, they can make that decision to report it themselves, but we do not have duty to report for an adult that is experiencing abuse. So, and it's very unfortunate, right? I know, but self-determination, right? They have the right to make that decision on their own. So B is out. Help the mother address any systematic barriers that may be impacting her ability to leave the abusive situation. Are we there yet? Remember, we're looking for the first step. Not yet, right? There could be systematic barriers, but we're not there yet. D is actually a good answer, but it doesn't go far enough. So we're going to eliminate it. Why is D not as robust as A? Why is D not as extensive as A? We are not going to say you have to go to a shelter, right? She wants out. We're going to say, hey, I understand this is going on. Here are the resources that you have. I want you to know if you are in direct danger, you can do this. You can call emergency hotline. This is pretty much safety planning here, right? Here's the resources that are available. You will have a conversation from here. So we would do A. I would probably do A and then D, right? D only captures people who are in her support network and help her. What if she has no one in her support network and she does need a resource such as an emergency shelter, or something more? So A actually does not say anything about safety planning, but we're using our reasoning skills to know that A is going to give her the most options to choose from, and we can go from there. Self-determination, and like I said, we would probably be able to have a conversation from here. D is too limited, A is more broad. Does that make sense? Okay. We made it just over the hour. I am going to go ahead and take all of my markup off, but before we jump off, if you can just in the chat tell me one takeaway or one tool or one thing you're going to think about that you maybe are is on the front of your mind, or something that you're going to do differently or work on? What is one takeaway or one skill or one tool that you want to use from kind of learning some things from the study group today? Assess before action. I'm just going to shout out some of them. 5 W's, helping process, slow it down, eat a pie a day. Not jumping too much into safety. It's always like safety first, right? But we need to know that safety is at risk before we jump to safety. That's a really good one. So many here. Breaking down questions, helping process, don't add extra information, right? How these seem like pretty straightforward, but we really slowed it down and thought about it because it's a reading comprehension test. Reading comprehension test at the end of this, right? Who, what, where, when, why. Yes, 5 W's is like, for me, golden. So I like someone said this, not all 5 of the W's will be answered, but that does not mean we fill in and make assumptions when there isn't information on that. I really like that. Read twice, presenting problem, rule out the extremes. Where are you in the treatment process? These are all excellent. And notice everyone's kind of taking a little bit of what they need from different tools that we how do we feel now after getting to go through some of the practice questions? Do you feel like, okay, I got some tools now, or are you feeling better, worse? Oh my gosh, I'm terrified now. This was awful. Tools. Yeah, absolutely. If anything, you should be leaving with some more tools today. I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. We will put this up on YouTube. Share this with whoever's going to benefit. That's what the purpose of this is. We need more people out there in the field. We need more people to pass this test, and there's so many barriers. So that's what I'm here to do, is help you break this down and make this work for you. Remember, we have the $10 off for the rest of social work month. Please share widely, and I hope that you found this helpful in some sort of way. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out via email. And for those of you that are customers, our next study group is next Saturday, and that's on test day tips. So like, you are ready to take the test, where do you go from here? Also, if you're thinking about buying the package, we have study groups like this twice a month for free as part of the study package. I love them. They're fun. So definitely check us out if you are wanting to. Yes. Someone said, do you encourage people to apply for accommodations if you learn differently? Yes, this test is definitely set up for neurotypical learners. If you think that you need extra time or maybe a private room, apply. I think everyone should get accommodations, but that's not the world that we live in, so. Okay, thank you, everyone. If you have any individual questions, feel free to reach out, and thank you for joining us today. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you, everyone.